Welcome to another episode of FishingLocalWaters.com. We're so glad you decided to join us today. We happen to be at the Bowling Green, Kentucky at the Lost River Cave, where the Kentucky Water Alliance has made a decision to bring together all of the watershed coordinators and to begin to work on some collaborative efforts across the state of Kentucky. So we're very pleased to be here, to be invited, to be able to participate in that. We're going to bring you some of the highlights associated with that meeting. And again, thank you for deciding to join us for another episode of FishingLocalWaters.com. We'll be right back and tell you all about it. Welcome to another episode of FishingLocalWaters.com. Remember, if you're fishing, you're almost always fishing in someone's local waters. So when on private land, talk to the owners and ask permission. And always be courteous and good stewards whenever you're on private or public properties. As a reminder, if you haven't already, please subscribe below. It helps us and allows us to keep you informed. As always, we hope you enjoy this segment of FishingLocalWaters.com. Under the leadership of Laura Gregory, the Kentucky Waterway Alliance conducted their first Kentucky Watershed Network Collaborative Summit. This year's meeting was held at Lost River Cave in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Like many of Kentucky's waterways, this river and cave has a rich history. It was the site of Civil War encampments for the Confederates in 1861 and the Union Army in 1862. It facilitated several flour and grist mills, a distillery, and a sawmill. And in the 1930s, the 40s, and the 50s, it served as a nightclub featuring big band and jazz musicians. After the Cavern nightclub closed in the early 1960s, the site became an illegal dump site for some 30 years. In 1990, the Friends of the Lost River was formed, and they spent 8 years removing 55 tons of trash from the cave, river, and surrounding properties. In 1999, the first Lost River Cave underground boat tour was launched, and today over 80,000 individuals visit the cave and urban nature preserve each year. And this includes 4,000 school children who participate in their unique nature education programs. But like every other waterway in Kentucky, the work is never done. Recent operations at the cave were disrupted due to detergent being released upstream.
It was continuing to fight its suds problem, having had suds again appear in the river randomly with no known origin. This is the 17th time this has happened, and it forced the cave to cancel tour boat rides this weekend, saying the smell from the suds made it, quote, impossible for tours to continue. Lost River Cave's executive director, Ro Lansden, says she isn't just worried about the cave's loss of profit, but how it could affect other surrounding businesses.
The revenue that our tours generate also impact area gas stations and restaurants and hotels. And so the flow just comes to a complete halt because of the suds, because of this smell that is not tolerable inside the cave at certain levels.
The city of Bowling Green is currently trying to identify the source of the suds, working with several other entities to conduct inspections of utilities and facilities, as well as coordinate future testing. Lansden says authorities have narrowed the search down to a 5-mile area within the larger watershed.
Once the source was identified, the community did work collectively to find a quick resolution, and a positive corporate relationship was established and remains today. For these reasons, the Lost River Cave was a perfect setting for the first Kentucky Watershed Network Collaborative Summit. As individuals arrived, they were asked to sign in under the river basin in which they represent or lived. Close to 70 individuals gathered on a Friday morning to network and share ideas and to discuss best practices to improve water quality in the state of Kentucky. Laura Gregory opened the Kentucky Waterway Alliance meeting with appreciations and thanks to all who came. This included the water basin coordinators, watershed councils, friend groups, universities, government officials, and all the volunteers who worked diligently towards the well-being of Kentucky Waterways. As this map illustrates, Kentucky has 7 major river basins. The Kentucky Energy and Environment Cabinet has assigned a basin coordinator to each basin. Each basin has a network of creeks, lakes, and rivers. Similar to how the Friends of the Lost River was formed, community action groups often unite and are formed when these creeks, lakes, and rivers become endangered due to mankind's misuse, overuse, and abuse. If you've ever wondered about getting involved, several speakers explained how watershed councils and friend groups work within a local community and with state and federal governments.
Is start communicating. If we're going to have any success tackling some of the big issues that we see across the state, we've got to work together. We can't do it alone. We certainly can't do it alone. And so we have to figure out.
Each state may be a little different in their structures and department names, and each watershed plan may be structured a little bit different depending on the end objectives, but all need to meet the established federal EPA guidelines, and therefore the final means and methods generally align to fulfill these federal mandates. Now, once an action group is formed, they may want to formalize their organization by becoming a legal corporate entity, and most can qualify as a nonprofit 501c3. Most of these organizations incorporate the name of the waterway into their corporate name, such as the Bank Lick Watershed Council or Friends of the Lost River. In one of the breakout groups at the Kentucky Watershed Network Collaborative Summit, they discussed the means and methods to become a nonprofit 501c3 organization. Now you can call your group any name that is available and allowed by the state. It is your group. You can name it whatever you want. In the past, the larger organizations used the stream name and tacked on watershed councils, such as the Bank Lick Watershed Council, and smaller, more targeted groups, such as the Friends of the Lost River, became known as Friends groups. There are also watch groups and water advocate groups. And here's where it gets a little confusing. Because nature and water are fluid, what happens on the ground and in the streams is in a constant state of transition. Therefore, objectives change. The Friends of the Lost River started with the objective of removing 55 tons of garbage from the cave. Today, they are involved in education, preservation, restoration, and economic development. Water councils, friends, watch, and advocacy groups often do have overlapping goals and objectives. Think of the Watershed Council as bombers and the friend, watch, and advocacy groups as jet fighters. Regardless of the name or size, if an organization would like to receive funding from the EPA 319H Clean Water Act, a watershed plan needs to be prepared and submitted for review and approval. Kentucky does provide a watershed planning guidebook to help in the process, as does the EPA. Several consulting firms are also available to help groups write a compliant watershed plan. Friends, watch, and advocacy groups sometimes stay out of the funding process to allow them to go places government cannot, or where politicians, industry, and those trying to obtain and maintain funding dare not go, such as identifying the county's largest employer and taxpayer who just happens to be polluting local waters. Watershed projects are rewarding, but they are never simple. They require a multitude of talents. Knowing who you are and playing to your talents is critical, as is creating and maintaining a team whose talents complement each other and, most importantly, meet the ever-changing objectives. If you can relate to any of these factors, but don't want to jump in feet first, there are ample opportunities to wade in and help as a volunteer for a local watershed council or friend group or other preservation-oriented organizations. Tree planting, stream restoration, trail building, cleanup days, fundraising, data collection, and stream quality monitoring are just a few ways to get involved. Believe me, every watershed council and friend group needs supportive volunteers. They would love to hear from you. If you need help identifying, connecting with, and getting involved, reach out to the Kentucky Waterway Alliance or drop me an email via fishinglocalwaters.com, and we will work to get you connected. Again, a special thanks to the Kentucky Waterway Alliance for all the work they do. And as always, I would like to thank you for spending another day with us at fishinglocalwaters.com.